Bruce Lee once said he feared not the man who'd practiced 10,000 kicks, he feared the man who'd practiced one kick 10,000 times. So what does this mean, and how does it relate to our self-protection training? Essentially what Bruce Lee is talking about here is the benefits of focusing on one movement, or in our case, and even in his realistically, a small number of movements, and practicing them so much that they're ingrained in your subconscious. If I've got thousands of techniques, as I pretty much used to have when I was doing more traditional martial arts, traditional systems, then if I get in a real confrontation and someone's getting aggressive, the adrenaline's flowing, I'm going to get what technique syndrome. I haven't practiced those techniques to the extent that I know they're going to work in a real situation, because I haven't pressure tested them necessarily. And also there's too many of them to have them all downloaded into my subconscious. So that's where you're going to come unstuck. You're going to freeze, you're not really going to know what to do, and you won't be able to apply it realistically. If I've just got a small number of realistic movements, so for me it would be palm strike, hammer fist, elbows, knees, that kind of thing, and those are essentially my main artillery. When it comes to a real situation, I haven't got to think, what do I do now? Which one is best? I'm just going to go into it, because my training should kick in, right? Not only do you need to practice a small number of techniques, but a high number of times, it's also about the kind of practice you do. It can't just be me standing here going, I've got to get 10,000 palm strikes in, right? It's got to be realistic practice. I've got to put the time and I've got to put the repetitions in, but it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be deliberate practice. So I might be practicing on the pads, I might be practicing on a punch bag, I might be practicing on dear old Bob here, repeating techniques. I might be practicing even in the air slowly just to improve my movement. But I've also got to practice under live fire conditions. And by that, I mean with someone in front of me who's not going to give in, who's not going to be compliant. They're going to be a fully resistant attacker. They're playing the aggressive role. They're giving me the aggressive body language, maybe some verbal, and maybe firing full power strikes at me. So I've got to deal with it and then use my techniques full power with the adrenaline of about as close as you can get to a real situation, obviously within the parameters of safe training. So when I've practiced those small number of techniques a high number of times, and in realistic settings, as well as working on all aspects of those techniques, my main artillery there are going to be well refined, so that when it comes to the crunch, under the adrenal stress, the blood, snot and sweat of a real situation, I'm not going to be thinking, what do I do? Because I've pressure tested it and there's only a few techniques to choose from. There's not going to be a log jam, there's not going to be a what technique syndrome, and there's certainly not going to be any issue of do I know if it works or not, because I've practiced it in the right way. This doesn't mean that you literally only practice palms, hammers, elbows, knees, for example. It doesn't mean that. You've got your accessory strikes, you've got other movements, you've got to be competent in all ranges in other areas, whether it's stand-up, ground, everything like that, dealing with weapons, dealing with multiple attackers. You've got to be competent across all ranges, but the emphasis of what you train has to be focused on the main artillery and your personal safety and hitting off of a fence using your preemptive skills. That's your main focus, and then everything else is essentially an accessory, an add-on to that. But you've ideally got to keep it simple, and then when you've drilled that so many times, it's going to be the equivalent of you being the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.